What if the destiny of an entire nation and the stability of the international system depended on the unyielding vision of a single leader, and the world's persistent inability to find consensus on how to restrain him? In the unfolding war for Ukraine, Vladimir Putin is not merely challenging the West. He is wagering everything on Russia's capacity to endure sanctions, survive global isolation, and withstand even the unpredictable threats emanating from Washington. The chilling question that echoes through diplomatic halls from Brussels to Beijing is both simple and profound. Does anyone, anywhere, truly know what it will take to bring this war to an end? To unravel how we reached this perilous crossroads, we must journey back through the tangled roots of the conflict. Contrary to many headlines, the Russo-Ukrainian War did not erupt in February of 2022. Its origins trace back to the seismic upheaval of 2014, when fierce battles engulfed eastern Ukraine and Russia annexed Crimea. For 8 long years, the region simmered with tension and sporadic warfare. But in those cold days of February 2022, as columns of Russian tanks thundered across the border, the conflict exploded into a full-scale invasion, a moment that would forever alter the trajectory of the 21st century. It became a defining struggle, not only for Ukraine's independence, but for the wider contest over who shapes the future of Europe, and perhaps the world. The war is about far more than territory. At its core lies a dense web of history, identity, and clashing worldviews. Vladimir Putin, deeply marked by the collapse of the Soviet Union, a trauma he has likened to a historical catastrophe, views the expansion of NATO as an existential threat and a personal affront. From his perspective, the West's support for Ukraine is yet another betrayal in a long series of perceived humiliations stretching back decades. He is determined to restore, as he sees it, Russia's rightful sphere of influence, and to reverse what he calls the tragedy of lost lands and diminished status. For Ukraine, this is not only a fight for survival, but a battle for identity. Torn between East and West, Ukraine's leaders and citizens have repeatedly declared their right to self-determination. The Maidan Revolution of 2013 and 2014, when Ukrainians took to the streets, braving bullets and freezing winds to demand closer ties to Europe, marked a turning point. Since then, Ukraine has forged a new sense of national identity, distancing itself from its Soviet past and asserting its place among the free nations of Europe. As Dr. Hanna Shelest of Ukraine's Security Studies program explains, the war has galvanized Ukrainian national spirit. Every day of resistance is a step further from Moscow's shadow. But this is not merely a local or bilateral struggle. Over the past 2 years, the war has metastasized into a global contest for influence, resources, and values. Western nations, alarmed by the scale of Russian aggression, have funneled unprecedented volumes of military aid into Ukraine. From advanced anti-aircraft systems to precision-guided missiles, the West's arsenal flows eastward, matched by a relentless barrage of economic sanctions designed to cripple Russia's economy. Moscow, in turn, has responded with its own countermeasures, curbing gas flows to Europe, redirecting exports to China and India, and forging new alliances in Africa and Asia. As Dmitry Trenin of the Russian International Affairs Council observes, the Ukraine conflict is not just a regional crisis, it is a catalyst accelerating the global transition away from Western dominance. The consequences are everywhere. In European capitals, defense budgets have surged to levels not seen since the Cold War. In Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw, policymakers debate the purchase of new tanks, fighter jets, and missile shields. Across the world, food prices spike as the Black Sea grain corridor teeters on the edge of collapse, threatening supply chains from Egypt to Ethiopia. In cyberspace, a silent war rages. Russian hackers target Ukrainian power grids, while Western intelligence agencies scramble to defend critical infrastructure. The economic crossfire is relentless, with millions of ordinary people, farmers, factory workers, pensioners, caught in the fallout. For some, it means higher energy bills. For others, it means empty supermarket shelves or lost jobs as supply chains fray under the pressure of sanctions and counter-sanctions. On the battlefield, the picture is just as complex. Military analysts warn that Russia's war machine, rebuilt over years of preparation, is churning out more ammunition than NATO's combined efforts. Artillery shells pour out of Russian factories at staggering rates, giving Moscow a dangerous edge. Yet the resilience of the Ukrainian military has stunned observers worldwide. Despite facing overwhelming odds, Ukraine's defenders have held key cities, mounted daring counterattacks, and inflicted heavy casualties on Russian forces. President Volodymyr Zelensky's government, buoyed by international support and the fierce determination of its people, has pledged never to accept the loss of occupied territories or to abandon its ambition to join NATO and the European Union. As Zelensky himself declared, Ukraine will never bow. Our fight is not just for our land, but for the right to exist as a free nation. But the situation has become even more volatile in the past year. As of July 1, 2025, Russian forces control roughly one-fifth of Ukraine's territory, including the entire Luhansk region, the Crimean Peninsula, more than 70% of the Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, as well as significant portions of Kharkiv, Sumy, and Dnipropetrovsk. Recent advances have seen Moscow's troops capture thousands of square kilometers, an ominous sign for Kyiv and its allies. Putin's demands for peace are sweeping and uncompromising. A legally binding ban on NATO's eastward expansion, Ukraine's permanent neutrality, recognition of Russian sovereignty over all occupied territories, strict limitations on the Ukrainian military, and guarantees for Russian-speaking populations. The West, led by Washington, refuses to yield. Fresh arms shipments, such as the much-publicized Patriot missile systems, continue to arrive in Ukraine, accompanied by new rounds of sanctions and diplomatic pressure. Amid this standoff, attention has shifted to the corridors of power in Washington. Former President Donald Trump, expressing disappointment at Putin's intransigence, has threatened a new wave of economic pain for Moscow if the Kremlin does not return to the negotiating table. He has warned of even tougher sanctions, including punitive tariffs, on countries that continue to purchase Russian oil. Yet, according to sources inside the Kremlin, Putin remains unmoved. The Russian leader is convinced that his country has already endured the harshest sanctions imaginable, and that further economic penalties, no matter how severe, will not force a change in course. Indeed, some insiders caution that as Western unity fractures and Russian troops advance, Putin's territorial ambitions could grow even larger, stretching into new regions if Ukrainian resistance falters. The central conflict is now clear. The West's escalating campaign, combining economic warfare, advanced weaponry, and relentless diplomatic pressure, appears only to strengthen Putin's conviction that military victory is not only possible, but more vital than economic stability. As one anonymous Kremlin advisor told Reuters, he will continue until he gets what he wants. He believes Russia can wait out the West, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Ukrainian defenders brace for renewed offensives, and Europe steels itself for deeper energy shocks, food shortages, and persistent insecurity. Yet beneath the surface, doubts are multiplying. Can the Russian economy truly survive another wave of sanctions? Will China and India, now Russia's largest trading partners, continue to buy Russian oil and gas if it risks attracting Western retaliation? What happens if Putin, emboldened by battlefield successes and the limits of Western resolve, decides that even bolder moves are worth the risk? These questions gnaw at policymakers from London to Tokyo, fueling anxiety about the war's unpredictable trajectory. At this moment, the outcome hangs precariously in the balance. Ukrainian resistance remains formidable, buoyed by steady Western aid and a growing sense of national unity. Yet, as Putin's territorial demands expand and the Kremlin shows no sign of backing down, the world is left grappling with an unsettling question. How far is Vladimir Putin willing to go, and what, if anything, could actually make him stop? As the world watches with bated breath, the future of the Russia-Ukraine conflict teeters on a knife edge. What might the coming months and years hold, not just for Ukraine, but for the broader stability of the global order? Most experts warn that a long, grinding war is now the most likely path forward. Imagine a scenario where, for years to come, neither side gains decisive ground. The battle lines harden, but the fighting never truly ends. This frozen conflict could become the new normal, echoing the enduring stalemates in places like Transnistria or South Ossetia. For ordinary Ukrainians, this grim reality would mean constant danger. Fields studded with landmines, towns battered by shelling, and the faint hope for a normal life perpetually out of reach. The economy would remain in limbo, with reconstruction efforts stymied by ongoing insecurity and the lingering presence of unexploded ordnance. But there are even darker possibilities lurking on the horizon. Should the fighting intensify or spill into neighboring countries, perhaps triggered by a major cyber attack, a border incident, or a miscalculation on NATO's doorstep, the entire continent could be dragged into chaos. While the probability of nuclear weapons being used remains low, it is not zero. The mere possibility of escalation would send shockwaves through global markets. Energy prices would soar, financial systems would convulse, and food supplies would be threatened as Black Sea grain routes are disrupted yet again. The world has already seen how a single missile or cyber attack can spark diplomatic crises and panic in capitals from Washington to Warsaw. Conversely, there remains a glimmer of hope. Some analysts envision a future where, exhausted by losses and mounting costs, both Russia and Ukraine, along with their eastern and western backers, seek a negotiated settlement. But this path would be strewn with obstacles. Creative diplomacy and painful compromises would be required. Perhaps Ukraine would agree to a form of neutrality, Russia would accept ironclad security guarantees for both sides, and the West would help fund the reconstruction of shattered cities. In this best-case scenario, a new European security architecture could emerge, reducing tensions and offering a framework for stability. Such an outcome would demand strong leadership and a willingness to break with the cycle of mistrust and retaliation that has defined the past decade. What about Russia itself? Underneath the Kremlin's bravado, signs of strain are beginning to show. Military spending has surged to over 6% of gross domestic product, a level not seen since the Soviet era, siphoning resources from healthcare, education, and social programs. Western sanctions, though slow to take effect, are biting ever deeper, constraining access to advanced technology, finance, and global markets. According to insiders, dissent within Russia's ruling elite is quietly growing. Some senior officials, alarmed by the war's mounting costs, privately question whether the Kremlin strategy is sustainable. Still, Putin remains convinced that time is on his side. As one European security expert puts it, sanctions act like a slow poison. They do not kill quickly, but over time their effects accumulate and are difficult to reverse. Russia has responded to the economic onslaught with a flurry of adaptations. Over 40% of its foreign trade is now conducted in Chinese yuan, reducing dependence on the dollar and euro. Moscow's pivot to Asia and the global south has created new opportunities, but also new vulnerabilities. While China offers a vital economic lifeline, it does so on its own terms. Beijing's support is cautious, always calibrated to avoid crossing Western red lines. India, too, has increased its purchases of Russian energy, but remains wary of jeopardizing its ties with the United States and Europe. Meanwhile, Russia's military strategy continues to evolve. In a significant shift, logistics hubs have been relocated to Minsk, allowing Russian Iskander missile systems to extend their strike reach deep into Ukrainian territory. Wagner-affiliated units previously operating as semi-independent mercenaries are being reintegrated into the Russian military machine, with a focus on African resource control and supporting Moscow's broader strategic ambitions. Reports also suggest that Russia is reinforcing its military presence in Kaliningrad, challenging NATO's eastern flank, and sending an unmistakable signal to European capitals. The information war is every bit as fierce as the conflict on the ground. Disinformation campaigns, waged by both sides, spread rapidly through social media, clouding the truth and sowing confusion. Russian propaganda outlets push narratives of Western decline and Ukrainian Nazism, while Western media highlight Russian atrocities and the heroism of Ukrainian resistance. As a result, public perception and morale are shaped as much by competing storylines as by the actual course of the war. This battle for hearts and minds is critical. As expert Arnaud Kalika of the French Institute of International Relations notes, whoever controls the narrative controls the tempo of the conflict. The war has also exposed deep fractures within the international system. The existing security architecture, designed in the aftermath of World War II, has proven inadequate to prevent aggression or to resolve disputes. The slow, often paralyzed response of institutions like the United Nations has forced regional actors to take matters into their own hands. Hungary, for example, has blocked consensus on further EU sanctions against Russia, citing its own energy security needs, a sign of how even long-standing alliances can be strained by divergent interests. The economic ramifications stretch far beyond Europe. Global supply chains remain under strain, with the Black Sea grain deal in perpetual jeopardy. Disruptions have driven up food prices worldwide, hitting developing countries the hardest. Ukrainian drone strikes have targeted major Russian oil refineries, adding volatility to energy markets and raising fears of wider escalation. In Africa and the Middle East, millions depend on Ukrainian and Russian grain. Every interruption threatens to tip vulnerable populations into hunger. For ordinary people, the consequences of this great power confrontation are painfully real. In Ukraine, families are displaced, cities reduced to rubble, and children forced to grow up in bomb shelters. Across Europe, households face record-high heating bills, while industries struggle to adapt to the loss of cheap Russian energy. In Russia itself, The costs are mounting. Inflation erodes purchasing power. Foreign investment evaporates, and the specter of conscription looms over countless young men. So what practical lessons can viewers draw from this complex web of conflict, diplomacy, and global economics? First, do not underestimate the enduring power of economic tools, even when their impact seems slow or indirect. Russia's ability to adapt, by trading more in Chinese yuan and forging new partnerships in Africa and Asia, demonstrates how sanctions can reshape global commerce in unexpected ways. For businesses, investors, and policymakers, this underscores the importance of resilience and flexibility. Companies with exposure to affected regions must prepare for both sudden shocks and long-term instability, whether through supply chain diversification, scenario planning, or enhanced risk management. Second, this war is a stark reminder that geopolitics remains a force capable of upending even the most stable markets. For individuals, this means staying informed and agile, whether you are managing investments, considering job opportunities abroad, or planning travel in an increasingly unpredictable world. Diversification is not just a buzzword, it is a survival strategy. Those who adapt quickly to changing circumstances will fare best in this new era of uncertainty. Third, the information war is now a front line in its own right. Disinformation spreads with lightning speed, sometimes faster than missiles. Sifting truth from propaganda, questioning sources, and thinking critically are essential skills for every global citizen. As narratives shape policy and public perception can influence the course of a conflict, never accept headlines at face value. Seek out multiple perspectives, consult reputable experts, and be wary of easy answers to complex problems. Let us return to our central question. Is there anything that can truly compel Vladimir Putin to change course or bring this devastating war to an end? The sobering reality is that neither economic pressure nor military force alone is likely to sway him in the short term. Putin's calculus is rooted not simply in power, but in a worldview shaped by history, ideology, and according to some Kremlin watchers, even a sense of personal destiny. Only a combination of sustained resistance on the battlefield, relentless economic strain, and growing pressure from within Russia's own elite holds the potential to shift the equation. As Ivan Timofeyev of the Valdai Club argues, sanctions have made Russia more self-reliant, but they also sow seeds of dissent among the elite. At some point, internal pressures may become decisive. A negotiated peace, if it comes, will not arrive in a single dramatic moment, but through the slow grind of attrition, political, economic, and psychological. Trust will need to be rebuilt, and guarantees put in place to prevent future conflict. This will require creativity, patience, and courage from all sides. The integration of Ukraine into European structures could serve as an anchor for stability, while new arms control agreements might reduce the risk of further escalation. Here is a secret fact that most headlines miss. Behind the scenes, Russian military planners have quietly shifted logistics hubs to Minsk, using Iskander missile systems to extend their strike reach deep into Ukraine. This silent repositioning could reshape the battlefield map almost overnight, a reminder that in modern warfare, adaptability is as vital as brute strength. The world stands at a crossroads. The decisions made in the next year will echo for decades, shaping the balance of power, the fate of nations, and the daily lives of billions. As global citizens, our most important tools are vigilance and critical thinking. Stay informed. Question assumptions. Prepare for a world where change is the only constant. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and hit the bell for updates on the fast-changing